So with the new year starting, we all have different resolutions and things that we're wanting to achieve. Firstly, that may be going and getting a medical check or going to the dentist or having some alcohol-free months during the year or cutting back on those coffees that have started to get really expensive. If you're an employer, one of those things should be looking at your employment contracts and your induction and your policies and your job descriptions and your performance reviews, making sure you've got those in order. Let's talk a little bit about the employment contracts today because it is fundamentally one of the most important documents that you're going to have with this employee because it really sets out terms and expectations for the employee as to what you're going to be paying them, how they're going to be remunerated for their time, and what their role classification is going to be. Not an area that you want to mess around with or make mistakes on. When you're doing your employment contract, really make sure that you've done good research and that you've got the correct award. It's surprising how many businesses have old mate down the road is paying under a certain award, therefore we probably should. Or this sounds like it'll be okay. So when you're looking at your award, what I'm wanting you to do is to make sure that you're referencing the correct award and the correct classification pay level. And there's descriptions of those that you can find on Fair Work to make sure that you are getting the correct award and the correct classification. Then it's about how you're remunerating this person. How are you paying their wages? Is it going to be a flat hourly rate? Is it base plus allowances and overtime? Is it going to be salary? Are you including the leave loading? If they're driving, how are you going to be compensating them for their mileage? Do they have to have their first aid? Do they have to have tool allowances? So each different industry has its own specifics, and you need to be really clear as to what's in and what's out and how that's going to be remunerated. Then there's some other things that we always recommend that you think about having into your employment contract. Some of those are if the employee, it's at their discretion as to when they take their break, what happens if they work through their break? Are they going to be entitled to overtime? Are they able just to work extra hours for overtime and get paid as long as they put them on their timesheet, or do they need what happens with time off in lieu? Is this something that they're allowed to accrue up? How is it paid? How's it remunerated? How much can they accrue up? These are the types of things that I think are really important to have a good think about and to include into the employment contract so that there's clarity around it. Other areas that we see as being important is the covenant not to complete or the intellectual property. So depending upon your industry, that might be your database of clients, it might be recipes or intellectual property information. So we're wanting to make sure that we're clear in the employment contract as to what they are allowed to take from the business and what they're not. So some confidentiality of information about your clients when putting your employment contract together. They don't necessarily need to be 9 pages long and full of legal jargon. In fact, I am not personally a fan of those. I quite like contracts that are a little bit fun, a little bit welcoming, but that are still going to be legally compliant. We can also do contracts which are quite simple, written in plain language, so people with low literacy levels will be able to understand them. One of the mistakes that I see is people thinking, oh, they're only there for a short term or they're a casual, therefore they don't need an employment contract. And I would be very quick to tell you that they're probably the people that it's most important to have employment contracts with because there's that long-term relationship building that you've got with them. So you need to be very clear with your employment contracts for your temporary or casual staff and make them as tight as possible. Any questions? Contracts are not an easy area. Getting the right language, making sure that the inclusions are right can be tricky. There's some great information that you can get online from it, but be careful that you don't go into any rabbit holes or start referencing other countries, which we have sometimes seen happen, or old redundant awards, which we have also seen happening. So if you haven't had your contracts reviewed and looked at recently and you'd like us to have a bit of a look over and even just give a bit of a recommendation as to whether or not they're going to be sufficient or whether they could do with a bit of a touch up and improvement, by all means don't hesitate to give us a call. We'd love to be able to help you. Phoebe from HR Dynamics.